The sword didn't just cut through flesh, it served an entire era of history. Imagine standing on a battlefield that has been glassed over by the heat of a cosmic war. Standing in the center of a smoking crater is a warrior. He is panting, his armor is cracked, and he is holding the severed head of a king. He looks up at the sky, expecting to be crowned. He believes he has just saved the universe. In his mind, he is the hero. But in the eyes of God, he has just failed the ultimate test. We think we know the story of the devil. We think he fell because of a simple moment of jealousy in the Garden of Eden. But that is a lie. The tragedy of Iblis actually began thousands of years earlier, on this specific battlefield, standing over the corpse of a tyrant named Jaan ibn Jaan. To understand why the world is the way it is right now, we have to open the forbidden chronicles of history and witness the First World War. Not a war between men, but a war between the fire that obeys and the fire that rebels. The reason I am telling you this is because most of us have a huge gap in our understanding. We assume that before Adam, the earth was empty. But if you look at the classical works, specifically the Akhbar al-Zaman by the historian al-Masudi or the commentaries of Ibn Kathir, you find something startling. The earth was never empty. 2,000 years before the first human opened his eyes, the planet was teeming with civilization. It was the dominion of the Jinn. The texts tell us they built cities not of brick but of woven light and minerals mined from the hollows of the earth. They had markets, they had marriages, and they had prophets sent by Allah to guide them. For centuries, they lived in a delicate balance. But power does to the Jinn exactly what it does to humans. It rots them from the inside out. The Jinn began to believe they were the masters of their own destiny, and this arrogance birthed a monster. His name was Jaan ibn Jaan. In the ancient law, he is the last king of the Jinn. But he wasn't just a ruler, he was a biological catastrophe. Al-Masudi writes that under his reign, the Jinn began to use forbidden sorcery to alter their own physical forms. They stopped being creatures of pure, smokeless fire and twisted themselves into the monsters we fear in nightmares. They became the aquatic demons of the deep and the ghouls of the desert. Jaan ibn Jaan sat on a throne that commanded the winds. He possessed what the legends call the Shield of Jaan, a talisman of dark sorcery that he believed made him untouchable by the forces of the heavens. He spread what the Quran calls fasad, or corruption. But fasad is a polite word. What it really meant was carnage. The bloodshed was so profuse that the angels in the heavens looked down and were traumatized. This is why in the Quran, when Allah announces the creation of Adam, the angels ask, "Will you place therein those who will spread corruption and shed blood?" They weren't guessing the future, they were remembering the trauma of Jaan ibn Jaan. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, decided that this era of darkness had to end. But here is where the divine plan is subtle. Allah did not send an archangel of light to do the dirty work. He chose to send a jinn to fight the jinn. Enter Azazel. You know him as Iblis. But at this moment in history, Azazel is the most pious being in creation. The traditions recorded by At-Tabari describe him as a jinn who had worshipped in every corner of the heavens. He was disciplined, he was fierce. He was known as the peacock of the angels. But Allah knew what was hidden in Azazel's chest, a microscopic seed of pride. Azazel didn't just love God, he loved his own status with God. He hated Jaan ibn Jaan, not just because Jaan was evil, but because Azazel felt superior to him. He wanted to go down there and prove that he was the pure fire. So, the gates of heaven opened, and the war of the two fires began. Azazel descended upon the earth like a meteor strike. Behind him were legions of angels, but Azazel led the charge. This wasn't a simple battle, it was a war of elements. The chronicles suggest that Jaan ibn Jaan unleashed the full might of his sorcery. He commanded the magma of the earth to erupt, trying to burn the wings of the heavenly host. He summoned tornadoes and weaponized the storms. But Azazel possessed a weapon that Jaan did not. Azazel knew the Ism Allah al-Azam, the greatest name of Allah. When Jaan raised his shield to block the attack, Azazel didn't use physical force. He spoke the names of God, and the sorcery of the tyrant shattered like glass. Azazel was ruthless. He didn't just defeat the enemy, he hunted them. He chased the massive Marid giants into the deepest trenches of the ocean. He drove the Ifrit into the desolate wastes of the empty quarter. He dismantled the amber cities of the Jinn until they were nothing but dust. He was cleaning the house of God. Finally, it came down to the two of them, the pious general versus the corrupt king. They met on the last stronghold of the Jinn. Jaan ibn Jaan, battered and broken, looked at Azazel. He saw a creature of his own kind, but one shining with the light of heaven. Azazel struck him down. He executed the tyrant and ended the dynasty that had lasted for thousands of years. The silence that followed must have been deafening. The screams stopped. The fires died down. Azazel stood there, his foot on the chest of the dead king. And this is the moment where he failed. As he looked at his own hands, he didn't think all praise is to Allah who granted me victory. Instead, a whisper crept into his mind. He thought, I did this. He thought, I am the savior. I have earned this planet. I have paid for this throne with my sweat and blood. He began to view his relationship with Allah as a transaction. He believed that because he had served, he was now owed ownership. And this is the root of all evil, thinking that the Creator owes the creation anything. Azazel governed the earth for thousands of years after the war. He felt secure. He felt he was the inevitable heir to the throne. Then came the announcement that shattered his ego. Allah said to the angels, I am placing a vicegerent, a Khalifa, on earth. Azazel straightened his back. He thought, finally, my promotion. But then Allah brought forth the clay, Adam. Azazel looked at Adam and saw only mud. He saw darkness. He saw weakness. He compared his own glorious, blazing history of warfare against this static, drying lump of earth. And he said the famous line recorded in the Quran, I am better than him. You created me from fire and him from clay. Here is where we need to correct the narrative. Azazel thought he was making a logical argument. He thought, fire is strong, clay is weak. I am a warrior, he is nothing. But Azazel was wrong. Allah is Al-Hakim, the All-Wise, and He knew what Azazel did not know. First, fire destroys, but clay grows. Azazel was a creature of destruction. Even his justice was destructive. He killed and purged. But Adam? Clay is the source of life. From clay comes the harvest, the trees, and the food. Allah needed a caretaker for the earth, not just a soldier. Second, and most importantly, Allah was testing for submission. Azazel obeyed Allah when it suited him, when he got to be a general and a hero. But the moment Allah asked him to do something that hurt his ego, like bowing to Adam, he rebelled. This proved that Azazel never truly worshipped Allah. He worshipped his own self-image. By arguing with Allah, Iblis proved he was just another version of Jaan ibn Jaan. Jaan was a tyrant who ruled with muscle. Iblis became a tyrant who ruled with intellect. Both of them failed to understand that there is no power and no victory except through Allah. The tragedy of Iblis is not that he was replaced, it is that he was exposed. The war against Jaan ibn Jaan was a test. Azazel passed the physical test of fighting, but he failed the spiritual test of humility. So, the reason I am telling you this is to change how you see the devil. He isn't a victim, he is a warning. He is a warning that you can have the knowledge of a scholar, the discipline of a monk, and the resume of a warrior. But if you have one grain of arrogance in your heart, it means nothing. Iblis fell because he looked at his past achievements and thought they made him independent of God's command. He is still fighting that war today. He wants you to argue with the wisdom of Allah, just like he did. But remember the clay. Clay is humble. It sits low. But it is from the dark, quiet earth that life blooms. Fire rises high, but eventually it just burns itself out. Allah knew, and the devil never understood.